From the very first pages, the Lean Startup invites you into a way of thinking about entrepreneurship that prizes learning over guessing, speed over perfection, and a relentless focus on customer value. It's not a blueprint for a single product or a fixed recipe. It's a mindset and a method for turning ideas into real, repeatable progress. The book begins by reframing entrepreneurship around learning that can be measured and trusted, not around grand bets or heroic, once-off launches. The core idea is simple in form but radical in practice. To build something people actually want, you don't start with a grand plan or a perfect feature set. You start with the smallest thing that can learn something valuable about customers, markets, and feasibility. That thing is your minimum viable product, or MVP, a vehicle for learning rather than a finished product ready for mass distribution. With the MVP in hand, teams enter a loop of build, measure, learn, a disciplined rhythm that accelerates learning while minimizing waste and wasted effort. The Lean Startup isn't just a collection of techniques for product teams. It's a way to think about uncertainty itself. Risk and ignorance aren't things to be avoided. They are built into the reality of starting something new. What matters is how quickly you illuminate those unknowns and how effectively you adjust course as you learn. This means building experiments that are small, cheap, and designed to yield fast, actionable feedback. It means designing tests that reveal the truth about customer needs, willingness to pay, and the practical feasibility of your ideas. And it means cultivating a culture that expects to pivot when the facts change, rather than clinging to a plan because it feels safer or more glamorous. The narrative is anchored in a practical philosophy. You learn by making things, measuring how customers react, and using that data to decide whether to persevere, pivot, or stop. The MVP is not a finished product. It's a learning device that helps you validate or invalidate core hypotheses about the business model, the product's value proposition, and the path to sustainable growth. The point of this approach isn't to minimize effort for its own sake, but to maximize the speed and relevance of learning while minimizing wasted work. The goal is to reduce waste and to push learning to the front of the process so you can course-correct early, often, and cheaply. One guiding thread throughout is the power and danger of data. The book consistently warns against vanity metrics, numbers that look impressive but don't inform decisions. Instead, it champions actionable metrics that speak directly to a team's ability to learn and adapt. In practice, this means designing experiments with clear, meaningful signals that let you discern whether a given change truly improves the metric you care about. It also means treating metrics as hypotheses to be tested rather than trophies to be displayed. In this light, measurement becomes a tool for learning rather than a scoreboard that masks unknowns behind big numbers. The early chapters ground these ideas in concrete stories and a wide constellation of sources. There's a nod to Geoffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm and to Steve Blank's Early Evangelists, reminding us that the path to scale is often paved by the earliest adopters who are most hungry for value and most willing to help you learn. A memorable anecdote about Dropbox demo video shows how carefully chosen signals can spark a rapid, well-targeted spread of interest. The video didn't just showcase a product. It signaled a narrative that resonated with the dig crowd, triggering a cascade of attention and learning. That case is a reminder that small, well-timed signals can amplify learning and accelerate momentum without forcing you into costly campaigns. As the narrative unfolds, the book widens its lens to show how lean thinking can take root in a broad ecosystem of entrepreneurship. It's not just about software startups in Silicon Valley. It's about how lean principles can guide product development, customer discovery, and rapid iteration across industries and settings. The text anchors itself in a mosaic of real-world cases, interviews, and readings that demonstrate how tiny experiments and disciplined deployment can steer a venture toward product-market fit. The message stays consistent. Moving quickly and learning fast are not opposites but allies in the pursuit of a scalable, sustainable business. Two foundational chapters. The emphasis on measurement and the constant question of whether to pivot or persevere provide the practical spine of the book's early work. In Measure, teams are urged to design experiments that expose true customer behavior and willingness to pay, while keeping learning costs low so feedback cycles stay fast. An example involving a competitor's pricing threshold illustrates how seemingly small design choices can make a big difference in how easy or hard it is for customers to adopt a new product. The aim is to surface honest, actionable metrics that guide decisions about continuing with the current approach, testing a new one, or stepping back to rethink the whole hypothesis. Pivot or persevere builds directly on that learning. It's a reminder that startups aren't on a straight line to success. They're on a learning journey in which the path often threads through changes to product scope, business model, or target customers. This is where stories like Path, Wealth of Pivot narratives, and organizational and funding shifts come into play. The book also nods to IMVU's revenue experience and other pivot stories to illustrate how new learnings can unlock entirely new trajectories when prior assumptions prove misaligned with reality. In short, if the data keeps pointing you away from your original bets, changing course isn't a sign of failure. It's the smartest way to conserve resources and increase the odds of long-term success. The chapter on batch appends a deeply ingrained business intuition, the instinct to deploy only after months of polishing and testing in isolation. Lean startup advocates for smaller, more frequent releases that keep the learning loop spinning. It argues that large, infrequent launches tend to accumulate hidden defects in customer understanding and operational capability. By releasing more often, teams can gather early signals and adjust quickly. The notes draw on Wealthfront's deployment infrastructure and the broader practice of continuous delivery to show how a small, disciplined cadence can yield big gains in understanding and responsiveness. The legacy ideas about batch size, when to batch, how large a batch should be for a given context, are reframed in terms of knowledge flow. Smaller, faster releases accelerate feedback and learning, while larger batches risk the death spiral of wasted effort and misread customer need. Beyond these chapters, the Lean framework softens into a broader, more practical stance. It emphasizes the pull of customers and the flow of work in delivering value, the applicability of Lean thinking to healthcare and education, and the desire to move from theory to action. The narrative encourages readers to dive into foundational texts and practical guidance that deepen understanding of continuous deployment, lean product development flow, and the dynamics of large versus small batch work. The through line remains clear. To learn quickly and de-risk a startup, teams should run many small, well-designed experiments, deploy frequently, measure the right things, and be prepared to pivot when the evidence demands it. Putting these threads together, the book presents a coherent story about how lean thinking translates into real-world practice. It's a mosaic rather than a singular argument, a tapestry of case studies, interviews, and readings that together illustrate how learning-driven product development plays out in diverse sectors. The core message is that the fastest path to scalable, sustainable growth lies in creating a culture of validated learning, one that starts with small, learning-driven products and grows through rapid experimentation, disciplined deployment, and careful attention to what truly moves the needle for customers. As the narrative shifts toward Part 3, the focus moves from validating ideas to scaling them without losing the learn-it-fast discipline that made them viable in the first place. The book reframes growth not as a sprint of flashy features but as a steady, repeatable engine that can be tuned and scaled. Growth, adaptation, and ongoing innovation are presented as a unified practice rather than separate concerns. The practical chapters illuminate how a startup can expand its reach while preserving the core feedback loops that keep learning fast and honest. The aim is to maintain agility even as a company grows, ensuring that new teams, processes, and markets don't dull the company's sense of customer value or its appetite for experimentation. Grow centers on the mechanics of scalable traction. Viral growth stories, like the Hotmail anecdote, show how quickly a product can spread when the value to users is obvious and the growth mechanism is simple and repeatable. Yet growth is not treated as mere virality, it's anchored to a deeper understanding of customer value. The idea of 4 customer currencies, time, money, skill, and passion, provides a practical lens for designing and testing value delivery. These currencies become levers you can optimize with rapid experimentation to move from early adopters to a broad base of customers who derive meaningful value from the product. Geoffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm underlines a central truth. Strategies that work with early adopters often need careful adaptation to serve mainstream customers. The message is a call to translate fast traction into sustainable growth by aligning features, pricing, and channels with the right market segments over time. Adapt shifts the lens to the organization itself. It begins with a nod to the Toyota production system, not as a blunt manufacturing doctrine but as a philosophy of seeing waste, aligning production with demand, and learning to improve processes continuously. Net Promoter Score is offered as a practical tool for gauging customer loyalty and forecasting growth, linking feedback signals directly to product decisions. QuickBooks is used to illustrate how a company can reconfigure its internal processes in response to customer needs, demonstrating that the true test of a lean organization is its ability to stay aligned with customers as conditions change. Adapt isn't about pushing harder. It's about becoming more responsive, more capable of course correction, and more attuned to what customers actually value as markets evolve. Innovate explores how even established organizations must maintain an entrepreneurial heartbeat. Lean thinking isn't a startup-only discipline. It's a way of organizing work, sharing knowledge, and pursuing both incremental and disruptive improvements within larger entities. The text points to engineered in Japan and other cross-cultural perspectives as ways to reimagine how teams manage knowledge and pursue innovation. It also nods to wider industry discussions about technology management, helping readers see that lean practices can be applied at scale and in diverse contexts. The core claim is that innovation is an ongoing capability, not a one-off sprint. It's built through disciplined experimentation, a deep understanding of customer value, and a willingness to rethink assumptions as new information comes in. The epilogue, Waste Not, reframes lean thinking as an ongoing journey rather than a destination. It points to a broader ecosystem of lean literature and signals that the movement is alive and evolving, with new research programs and communities constantly exploring how validated learning can be deepened and broadened. Disclosures reveal the author's transparency about relationships with various firms, underscoring a commitment to accountability in practical experimentation. The acknowledgments extend gratitude to mentors, colleagues, customers, and partners who helped shape the method and propagate its ideas. The closing portrait of Ries emphasizes that lean startup is a collective, evolving enterprise, a collaborative practice supported by a broad network of people who shared the belief that startups should learn fast, fail early when needed, and relentlessly pursue customer value. Taken together, the book tells a comprehensive story. Startups begin with a disciplined humility about what they don't know, then move through careful experiments that turn uncertainty into validated learning. They use MVPs to start conversations with customers, and they keep those conversations alive with the build, measure, learn loop. They remain willing to pivot when data demands it, and they measure progress with actionable metrics that truly illuminate next step. They deploy in small batches, learning from fast feedback rather than waiting for a perfect product to appear. And they carry this learning into growth, adaptation, and ongoing innovation, ensuring that even as a company scales, it remains tightly aligned with customer value and with the core impulse that started the venture in the first place: a relentless curiosity about what customers actually want and how to deliver it better, faster, and more intelligently than anyone else. In this way, the lean startup isn't just a guide to building businesses. It's a philosophy of disciplined experimentation, a language for telling the truth about what customers need, and a practical toolkit for turning uncertainty into sustainable progress. It invites founders, managers, and teams to see every decision as an experiment, every metric as a clue, and every setback as another opportunity to learn. That is the core invitation: to build, measure, learn, and keep learning, so the path from idea to impact remains clear, fast, and relentlessly customer-centered.